It's a great day to talk hockey with Grant McCagg on HabsCast.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, you heard that right. That was legendary Montreal Canadiens broadcaster Dick Irvin Jr. He now does the intro for both my podcast and Liam's. Is that pretty cool or what? I took broadcasting in college. Was the first. I mean, I switched to journalism, but major impetus for doing it and getting into broadcasting was that gentleman right there, Dick Irvin. he was I just idolized the man. I thought he was the best radio hockey broadcaster there's ever been. Loved Danny Gallivan, but Dick did it all. He did the color, he did the play-by-play, the interviews galore. Loved him, and had such a long. Well, I mean, Danny was around before he started his career before I started watching, but the whole first 30 years of my life, Dick Irvin was the man, right? He was Danny's sidekick, and then after Danny retired, Dick became the play-by-play guy and was just as good. And of course, Danny did. They did radio together, TV together, and Dick took things over. But Liam, great thanks to Liam to get Dick Irvin to do a couple of sound bites to introduce our podcast. That's just it doesn't get any better than that. It's going to be a great day to talk hockey every day. To hear Dick Irvin say my name, even, he doesn't know me from Adam, I'm sure, but it's just it's a thrill. And I'm special thanks to Liam and of course to Dick for doing it. And Dick Irvin was a pro. He rarely screwed up. Unlike me, this is a special podcast where I am going to go on the record as saying I goofed. I ranked Daniil Prokhorov ahead of Alexander Zharovsky, and I goofed up. That yes, it's early. My rule of thumb is you wait 5 years, and I know it's only 5 months later, but the writing's on the wall. You look at, well, I'll just bring it up here. Most KHL points at 18 years of age. Zharovsky's already top 10. And look at how many games he's played, 15. One player on that list in the top 10 played less than 40, and that was Michkov, who played twice as many. Well, Zharovsky needs 5 points in his next 15. He got 15 in his first 15. He needs 5 points to tie Michkov, but he's on pace for 61 points. Tolvanen is the all-time leader for 18-year-olds in the KHL at 36. He's going to shatter that. Look at the points per game, 0.735 for Tolvanen. He is the highest. Zharovsky's at a point per game, and I really don't see that going down. I've watched every game so far this year, and he just keeps getting better. And he keeps getting more trust from his coach, Viktor Kozlov, former NHLer, and he's playing center, which just blows me away. Like, when you look at this list, there aren't many that played center, at that age, like Kuznetsov. And Kuznetsov ended up doing some pretty special things in his first few years in the NHL. Arguably could have won the Conn Smythe. I thought he was the best player that playoff, but they gave it to Ovi. It all bodes well for Zharovsky. Prokhorov, safe to say it's been a tough start for him this year. I'll just bring up his stats here. Let's just see. Here we go. 11 games in the KHL, 1 goal, 2 games VHL, and then down to the MHL, no points in either. I don't know if he's injured right now. He hasn't been playing much. I mean, getting 2 to 3 minutes a game in the KHL, so you can understand why his stats weren't superlative when he was up with the big club. But hey, and Dynamo Moscow is a better team than Salavat. I'll give all of those reasons. And he's 6'5", and they take longer. Blah blah blah. I'm not saying that Prokhorov won't become a good NHLer. I think he will, but his upside is most likely middle line, big power forward, middle line winger that won't get a lot of assists but will score some goals. That's his upside, I think. I think he'll be a very strong power forward type, good skater. But what we've seen from Zharovsky is just, there's no comparison at this point. The fact that Zharovsky has gone from being he was a winger last year to being basically a second line center in the KHL at 18. It's just remarkable. I'm trying off the top of my head to think of a player that has had a more impressive improvement curve over an 18 to 20 month span, and it's hard to come up with somebody that can rival what this kid has done. Like, he was playing in the NMHL 2 years ago, which is basically tier two Russian junior, which is not very good. And he didn't even play in the MHL 2 years ago. So for him to jump to the MHL, have the kind of stats that he had, and last year in the KHL in the playoffs, to this year now, a few months later, being switched to center and playing a top 2 role and putting up stats that are going to blow away every 18-year-old up, I mean, you look at this list, right? Those are some pretty highly touted players, right? I mean, Boot, top 12 pick, Michkov, top 6 pick. Kuznetsov wasn't a top 10 pick, but he should have been. Kaprizov, well, how highly touted was he after he was drafted, right? And Tolvin and everybody raved about he's going to be a superstar because of what he was doing in the KHL at that age. So, he's going to blow all of those guys away in points, it looks like. It's remarkable. And, in my wildest dreams and my most, optimistic projections, I would not have said that he'd be doing what he's doing so far. So, look, I scouted for the Habs for a couple of years. I've got a few Russians right through the years, got a few wrong. This is one that I'm glad that not that they listen to me anyways, but I'm glad that the Canadiens scouting staff, weren't on board. Disagreed with me having Prokhorov ahead of Zharovsky in the rankings. Mind you, I did like Zharovsky quite a bit, and when the first round had passed and both of those guys were still on the board, I did go on the record as saying, look, I'd like them to move up to take a Russian, and I prefer it to be Prokhorov, but I would have no issue with it being Zharovsky, one of the 2 Russians. And that's what they did. They didn't, they moved up for a Russian. Skill-wise, I You know, Zharovsky to me was a top 10 talent. You know, but there were questions, like there often are for Russian players, like his play away from the puck, how how competitive was he, you know, away from the puck, especially his defensive game. Was he a little lazy, skinny? Was he going to be, you know, too weak to compete against pros? Certainly, this quickly, I did not expect it, right? I think he's still like 175 pounds. So for him to step in at 6'2", that's pretty skinny. So for him to step into the KHL this year, move to center, and play a regular center role, put up a point per game, play well defensively, win a lot of puck battles. Uh, it's just been remarkable, and I think right now I can safely say he looks like one of the steals of the draft. Like the Canadiens did it with Hudson. Hudson, if you did a redraft today, looks like a top 5 pick. So does this. So does Zharovsky right now. I don't do redrafts. You know, I don't. I'm not on the record as that being something that I do. Certainly not in the first 5 years. Um, but if I did do a redraft today of the draft class in 2025, I think Zharovsky'd be in my top 5. He's just what he's doing is so impressive. So, you know, Russians, the Canadiens, look, they were lucky that Demidov dropped to them at 5, and I get it. You know, there's always some question marks with Russians. When do they come over? How do they develop in Russia? Do they have bad habits? Will they, you know, if things aren't going well for them in North America, always have the option to go back to Russia and to the KHL if things aren't working out in North America, pro hockey in North America. So there's a question, you know, in the political landscape, just all of that stuff. I get it, but you know, Zharovsky, I was surprised that he didn't go in the first round at the end of the first round because especially from like about 20 on, like 25 on, everybody's got question marks, right? Like there's no guarantees that any of them are top 6 forwards, but of anybody that you would have picked from 25 to 35, nobody had more upside than Zharovsky. And, you know, there'll probably be 5 guys that don't become regulars in the NHL, drafted 25 to 35 or 25 to 40, certainly. So why not take a flyer on the guy, the kid with the most potential? The Canadiens, full marks again. You know, they did it with Demidov, even though I think most teams would have taken him at 5. He was just extra special. I mean, you saw it on video. You didn't have to see him live, right? I had him second ranked, and it was a toss up between him and Celebrini for me, first overall. You know, they did it with Hudson. Kudos to them. They did it with Fowler to a certain degree because Fowler did not have an athletic body, you know, not typical. If you looked at him, just the eye test, you know, during the combine or whatever, you say, oh, geez, this kid, you know, he won't be able to play. Yeah, he stopped a lot of pucks, but he's just doesn't have the athleticism to be an NHL goalie. Well, they took a flyer on him in the 3rd round, and again, by the 3rd round, what the hell, you know? 75% of the players aren't making it anyway. Why not go with somebody that has proven that you know, he can stop pucks? The Canadiens, they have a good staff, and they, you know, they do their homework, and kudos to Nick Bobrov again. It's funny, you know, after um, well, after taking Slav and then him getting injured, struggling in his rookie year to get a lot of points and missing the second half, and then they draft Reinbacher. It was, all the media members that trotted out Bobrov's draft record for drafting Europeans in particular with LA and New York. No, he had some misses, right? That's true, but um, you know, it's not a one-man staff. Like Marty Lapointe is just as much of a say, and they work well together. They work well off of each other, and they've got all other scouts have a say too. Like if you've ever seen any of their draft meetings, they're all involved. They all have input, and Tommy Lehman, like all of these guys, European scouts, you know, they've all got say in who gets drafted, and then there's Kent Hughes as well. He has his input, right? But Bobrov, it just like any scout, you learn, you evolve, right? You learn from your mistakes. Yes, he picked some of the wrong players when he was with the Rangers, seventh overall, picking a player that's whose skating was in question, Elias Anderson. Well, he hasn't been picking players that have skating issues at the top of the draft anymore, right? Kravtsov, he had a great playoff. Well, the Canadiens aren't picking guys that just have a good end of the season. They're picking guys that are good throughout the year. You learn, that's why there's not a lot of 25, 30-year-old scouts in the NHL, in part because experience is so valuable. Like anything, with practice you become better, and with mistakes you learn from your mistakes. You have to approach it and be honest with yourself. So, okay, yes, I've made some good picks, but you also have to remember when you've erred and why, and try to figure out why you erred and try not to make that mistake again. Well, Nick Bobrov has grown as a scout as time has gone on. I've had conversations with him, and it's quite clear that he's an intelligent man. He's very thoughtful. He puts a lot of homework. The best scouts are the hardest working ones, and Nick Bobrov and Marty Lapointe are two of the hardest working scouts in the business. Trevor Timmins was the same way. Trevor worked his tail off, and that's how you become a good scout. There's no super scouts. I always say it, and it's true. Everyone has their misses and everyone has their hits, but the best ones typically are the ones who do their background work, do the analytical end of it, take in advanced stats and everything, put them all together, and work hard on, see as many players as many times as you can, right? Bust your tail, work hard, and listen to other people on your staff, put everything together, check your ego at the door, right? And not just, oh no, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Input everything and come up with the best list and the best plan. Montreal's scouting staff, they're doing a fantastic job. I might be number one in the NHL right now, since the last 4 years. They got to be right at the top. So, like I say, good thing they weren't going off my draft list, because right now they'd have their top pick would be a guy that has 1 point so far this year. But hey, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on Prokhorov. He's 6'6" kid, 6'5". They always take longer. I think he'll be a solid. He's an NHL style player, right? But he's not nearly as smart as Zharovsky, yes, I know that there are limits with his IQ, his offensive hockey IQ. He doesn't see the ice great. All of those things, well, those are things that Zharovsky does way better. And because he's developed these other parts of his game, it's you know, it's become apparent to me that if I were to redo my draft list, I would have those two flipped. I definitely have Zharovsky ahead. So, yep, I goofed, and I'm not afraid to admit it. But you have to, you know, you've got to, you can't ignore those things. There are some independent scouts, and it's usually younger ones that, you know, they're gung ho and they get a little critical of NHL teams. I mean, I was guilty of it 25 years ago at times, thinking, oh well, you know, I like that guy more, and this NHL team picked the other guy, so I must be smarter than you know, I must be smarter than them. But then, you know, when I go back and I revisit and I look at it, oh, geez, I had him ranked that high, you know. Oh, I ranked him. You know, you have to be honest with yourself, and there's no one out there that has a perfect draft list, and that includes NHL teams. So it's a humbling business, and you know, like I had Pod Colson, I think top 5 in his draft year ahead of Caulfield and Boldy. You know, um, Russians are tougher. The, I think you'll find that like NHL teams, but you know, they hit and miss on Russians probably more than any other, and with good reason, right? They're not seeing them as often. Some never come over, right? You draft them and they never leave. They get a sweet deal, or you know, they don't want to be in the West, or whatever the case may be. You know, um, it's like Russians and goaltenders are the two most unpredictable, I think. Um, when I was part-time scout with the Habs, I I I'd submit my list to Trevor, and I mean, I wasn't in draft meetings, and you know, my list didn't really have have any impact whatsoever. Uh, but I had, you know, I did rankings, and I and a lot of it was based on just guys I saw on video. Like obviously the Russians I'd only saw on video. I didn't go over to the U18s and stuff like that as a part-time scout. But I know that 2010 I had the top guy on my list when the Canadiens drafted, I guess it was Tenorti, was Kuznetsov. I had him top 10, and as time, you know, as it turned out, he would have been a better pick than Tenorti. So sometimes you get him right, sometimes you get him wrong. You know, Kuznetsov was he was he was pretty dynamic in his draft year. Came up big in big games, but NHL teams, there weren't many of them picking Russians at the time. You know, it was Tampa, Washington, maybe St. Louis. There weren't many that would take a chance on a Russian in the first round. Um, but then you know, when you saw the success of a Kucherov who dropped like he did, Vasilevsky, uh, Kuznetsov, Tarasenko, team teams started to think, well, you know, especially when you get to about 20 in the draft, you got to consider the best Russians, right? Um, so I've had some misses and some hits. I mean, I even like here's a couple other guys in recent years. Marchenko, right? I had him 16th overall in what was it, 2018? He ends up going 49th overall to Columbus. Well, top 35 scorer last year. He's on pace for 82 points this year. 73 last year. I think he's top 10 in points from his draft class. So, there's one. There's one I got right. Um, Dorofeyev, he didn't go to the third round. It was 2019, I think 79th overall to Vegas. 35 goals last year. He's on pace for 57 this year. I ranked him at 28. So, that one I got right. Surin 2 years ago. It's funny. That's who I wanted the Habs to pick instead of Age, but they both turned out quite well. Surin was 23, third overall in 2024. He turned 18 in August, but he's top 20 in KHL scoring, right? So just turned 19, in August. His plus minus is plus 17. He's second best in all of the KHL as a teenager, which is crazy good. So I think he's a good one. And it's looking like that was a good ranking for me. So, it just goes to show, and especially with Russians, there's hits and there's misses. I had Zharovsky at 24th overall, so the Canadiens picking him at 34, I had zero issue with it. But in hindsight, if I were to do the rankings again, I'd have Zharovsky at 10 or higher, and I'd have Prokhorov at 24. So there's, absolutely no issue with admitting that that I got that one wrong. And hey, you're scouting 17, 18-year-old Russians on video. You're gonna get some wrong. So, anyways, like I say, thank you, Montreal, for doing your homework on it and taking the chance on the guy with the higher offensive upside, because the rest of his games come on. And I've got video. I've watched every game of Zharovsky's this year, and he's just getting better and better. Let's have a look at his last game. He scored a goal in it, and he was terrific. This was his first shift. They won 2-1. He scored a goal. He's leading the KHL in points per 60 minutes, which, look at he's just so shifty. He gets the puck and it's almost impossible to get it from him. I thought in the KHL he'd get checked a lot more. And you know what? Really, to date this year, I think he's got fewer turnovers than he did last year. He's not doing quite as much dangling as he did last year, but he's beating guys every time he gets the puck. He beats the forechecker just about every single time. He's just so shifty, smart. He protects the puck so well. For a kid that's like 175 pounds, it's so impressive how well he protects the puck. I mean, being 6'2" and the long stick, that helps, right? But he's just got the knack. Like, look here, right? There's a lot of Beckett Seneca in his game, really. I don't know. I mean, you know how much I liked Seneca last year. I ranked him third after Demidov. I don't know that Zharovsky may not be better. Like, he's playing center in the KHL at 18. Like, his defensive game, I think, is better at this point. He's not quite as tall as Seneca, but there's a lot of similarities there. So imagine if, the Canadiens, get Demidov and then the Russian Seneca the next draft. It's like getting 2 top 3 picks back to back. Thank you very much. I just his hockey IQ is, well, his defensive play. Look there too, right? He always makes a stick handle and evades the checker. Like, he rarely gets the puck taken. There again, just one way, comes back the other. Gets the puck, keeps it away, right? He's just so good at protecting the puck. Wait till he gets another 15 pounds on. I hope he does, because it's going to become impossible, like at any level, right? If he's doing this, just like Demidov last year, what he was doing at that age in the KHL translated to being able to do it at least sometimes in the NHL, and we're seeing that already. Well, it's the same deal for this kid, and he's even younger than Demidov was last year. There's his goal right there. Comes to the puck, zips it in. Thank you very much. So, 2-1 win. They had one win in 7 games. He missed the start of the year. One win in 7 games, and it was in overtime. And since he's come back, they've got 8 wins, and all in regulation. 8 wins out of 16 or something like that. After 1 in 7, they started at the bottom of the standings, and now they've moved up into the middle of the pack, thanks to an 18-year-old kid. Like, it's just, it's remarkable. It really is. But his face-offs are getting better. He took quite a few. Took every draw on his line in this game. So his coach, Victor Kozlov, is clearly the plan is to keep playing them at center, and that only bodes well for the Canadiens, right? Because if you can play center in the KHL at 18, there's a good chance you're not too far off from being able to play at the NHL level, at the very least on the wing. So here he is again along the boards. He's very good. He wins a lot of puck battles for his age and size, which again surprised me going into this year. There's one shift here, and it's coming up, where he was a little lackadaisical on the back check, but they've been few and far between this year. He, as a rule, it has been quite good at getting back. And hey, he probably knew last year in the MHL, right? He was a superstar. He could get away with it at times, but he wants to keep a regular spot, especially at center, where you have to get back. You have to be back. You can't be basket hanging. He knows, he's got the memo that he's got to he's got to come back hard, and he's doing it regularly, which again was one of my concerns going into last year's draft, but he's really addressed them. His defensive game is improved by leaps and bounds. There he is, getting the puck and getting it out. Good along the no, he didn't get it out, but he won the puck battle. He's got such a good stick. Here's the one play here. I think he probably at the end of a shift, they scored. Didn't like his back check on that. But for all I know, he was gassed. Look at here he turned it over. So there was 2 shifts in a row where wasn't perfect defensively, but again, this is more. It's been quite rare this year to see those plays. 75-80% of the time, it's he's doing the job. I liked how he battled here and got the puck. He's got such good hands that I think he can become a half decent face-off man too. His eye-hand coordination's good. He's got such a quick stick and reflexes. I see potential there as a face-off man. Here he comes out, gets the puck, circles back away from the guy. He's always he always says he's great at evading checkers. He does the little spinner, half spin, and gets away. It helps with his length, but the puck skills, the savvy, he's so crafty and skilled. It's just it's a treat to watch him all year he's been excellent. And you know, you also have to consider that he missed the first 7 games of the year, comes in and he's scoring at a point per game pace at 18. It's just mind blowing. Here's one other play that I just wanted to feature from the game where check out the how shifty he is. I'm going to play that one more time. Again, he comes in, evades the one guy, and then that spinorama right the other way. What a treat to watch this kid. Again, just to wrap it up, I goofed, and I'm glad I goofed. I'm glad that the Canadiens picked the other Russian because he's clearly the better prospect at this time, and looks like he has top 6 upside all day. Looks like he has first line upside on a lot of teams, but it may not be on the Canadiens because they're building up an embarrassment of riches. But a line with him and Demidov on it, Hudson at the point. There's just so much potential there, and that could be your second line, quote unquote. Wow, the future is so bright in Montreal. Kudos to them picking up yet another draft steal, I think. And Canadiens fans, buckle up because the next decade is going to be so fun.